Welcome to Customer Driven with Chad McDaniel. Well known throughout the customer leadership industry, Chad has been the chief community leader for Execs in the Know, one of the top executive customer advocacy groups on the planet. With a passion for customer success and a desire to share and develop best practices, Chad's conversations with industry leaders aim to give unfiltered, unplugged access to industry peers who are customer obsessed, just like you. If you enjoy the show, please be sure to rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Now here's your host, Chad McDaniel.
Well, welcome to Customer Driven. Chad McDaniel, thank you again for joining us as we continue the podcast series, Women in CX Leadership. And my gosh, I have just been continued to be blown away with the incredible inspiration and insightful leadership this industry offers. It is an amazing industry, the customer experience industry. I'm so proud to be associated to it and work with some tremendous, bright, smart, great achieved people in this industry has the offer. My goal with this podcast, Women in CX Leadership, is to really accentuate and highlight the accomplishments and the successes that are taking place in today's leadership ranks. And, I am very blessed to have the opportunity. Crystal Collier is going to be joining us here for today's episode, and I'll have Crystal introduce herself here very, very shortly. But I just, really hope that our listeners that with each of these leadership episodes in the CX industry, they're inspirational. There's some takeaways, there's some insights, there's some learnings, and that we all can benefit as we continue our own career pursuits and at the same point, our successes with customer engagement and outcomes in our own brands. But without further ado, Crystal, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here. And for our listeners, I think it would be very helpful. Let's introduce yourself, a little bit about your current role, title, background, and kind of what a day in a life looks like for you in that role.
Hi, Chad. Well, thank you. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm really happy that we are seeing more about the CX industry because I think it's thriving and I think it's a great place to be. And I too feel lucky to be part of it. And I've been part of the CX industry for, about 18 years. Currently, I've most recently been working at Electronic Arts. We make video games, and our goal is to inspire the world to play. And my job is in the Worldwide Customer Experience Group, helping drive the strategy for how player experiences are improved when they need our help, using technology, using experimentation, taking learnings from insights to really make it the best player support experience it can be. I got my start in the industry many years ago when I was at AOL, and I was in the marketing group, and somebody said, hey, maybe retention matters. And this is a really long time ago, and it's the days of AOL, huge growth and CDs in your mailbox and CDs in your cereal box and lots of acquisition of members. And so a small group of us, 4 actually, formed a team and said, let's see what retention could look like here at AOL. And I was sent to our member services group, our call centers. And at the time, it was only voice and email. Eventually, we got to chat and some cool self-service, but this is the early 2000s. And I got into a call center for the first time, and I've never looked back. The interactions that I saw those employees having with our customers just really drove me to want to learn more about customer experience and be part of changing the way that brands interact with their customers and doing it in a way that was more positive, more empowered, more targeted, more personalized. And I've been doing that job either in a client or as a vendor ever since.
Tremendous background, Crystal. That's thank you again. And I had told you, first of all, my son is a huge, huge fan of EA, as most, probably all our kids are, but I am also myself, Electronic Arts. And a few years ago, we were in Austin with our Customer Response Summit, which is our national leadership event. And we actually partnered with EA to host us and the leadership group to a tour of the facility in Austin. And it was amazing to see the amount of backdrop that goes into the development and game creation and everything else from A to Z. So that was a memorable experience. I know I personally will not forget. But before we get into a little bit about leadership, Crystal, I wanted to just, again, for the listeners, wearing that customer experience hat that you have today, what do you feel or see is kind of on the minds of the customer experience executive today? The industry continues to evolve, customer or consumer demands continue to increase ever so. And you're kind of right in the trench of all of this. What is your thoughts and ideas about kind of from the lens of the customer experience leader and kind of what we're faced with and the things we need to be considering about?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I really try to be driven in my day to day by the things that matter most. And so for me, a couple things come to mind, and it's, of course, digital. And it's the way that we're shaping and using digital to provide customer experience. So that, of course, is powered by technology, and how technology like artificial intelligence can play into creating amazing experiences for customers. The second thing that comes to mind, which is related to technology and digital, is scale. So if we are seeking to do more for our customers and make them happier and deepen their engagement with the brand, we need to scale. And technology is also a huge part of that. And then finally, something that feels a little bit unrelated, but to me is so deeply connected. It's the emotional piece, and it's how we connect with our customers to make sure that we're leaving a lasting positive impression and making a really good memory. Sometimes when it comes to customer experience, we're not dealing with the most positive interactions, particularly on, the back end or later in the customer life cycle. There's something that's happened that's created frustration or anger. And so we really need to do something to change that feeling, and deepening those emotional connections and strengthening that relationship is really core to what we do. So those are three things that come to mind that I think about and talk to our senior leaders about on a regular basis.
Crystal, that's amazing, and I tell you, I absolutely subscribe and drink to that Kool-Aid. What you just said, I see it day to day in the community group, and could not agree more. I had told you that it's going to be tough for me because we could do a whole episode about that alone,
Yes.
and but that's not the intent of today. But maybe at some point we get back together and we will deep dive more on that specific background and comment you shared there. So, but moving on, really my goal was to inspire future generations of leadership, existing generations of talent, and other people around our industry. I'm very, very proud of the CX industry, what it represents in general, how many lives we can impact on a daily basis through our consumer support opportunities and models and in many other ways. When I think of women in CX leadership, obviously I was very honored that you would be willing to come in and spend some time with us about your philosophies and background and ideas towards this. And, I think it would be helpful, for the listeners, from your perspective and looking across the span of your career and even where you are today, what sort of fundamentally is your view on leadership? What has helped you? What's inspired you? What's kind of got you where you are and achieved today?
Wow, that's really fun to think about and talk about. And I've been influenced by so many other strong leaders, both men and women, even going back to my childhood with my mom and dad and the way I was raised. But to think about a couple of things that really summarize my views on leadership, I think would be really walking the talk. I think leaders have to understand what they're asking their followers to do, whether they're employees or peers or people in their network, and understand it in a way that they can do it themselves. Now, that doesn't mean that I can do the modeling that my super smart data scientist team does, but it means I really need to understand what it is I'm asking, how that feels to them, how that works, how long that's going to take, what are the implications of that, and really get deep into understanding and walking the talk. And I think another thing is about, how we approach work, and it involves taking risks. This is a very dynamic and thriving industry. And my job and my mindset has always been to challenge the status quo and be curious about why we do things the way we do them and why we think things the way we think them and what those feelings are after that. So taking risks to challenge that. And of course, when you take risks, sometimes you're going to fail and not everything's going to work. And for me, I learned a long time ago that recovery from that failure is the most important thing. And it's the old adage of when you get thrown off that horse, just dust yourself off and hop back on there and start riding again. And inherent in looking at a failure is understanding it. I can look back and see places that I failed, places that I didn't do my best, projects that didn't go the way I thought they were going to go. And it really comes down to me, really to my third tenet of leadership, and it's about communication. And communication in the form of listening with very open ears and a very open mind, listening to people that don't share your views and that are counter to what you think, so that you can bring that in and learn from it and weave it into the fabric of what you're trying to do. And that listening takes the form of voices from the customer voice to the employee voice to your peers, your mentors, your entire network. You really need to hear. And then it also takes the form of talking, sharing information, making sure that you communicate the goals, not just the what and when and how, but really importantly, the why. People need to understand why they're being asked to do something, what the implications are. I like to think of why in 3 areas. Why am I being asked to do this for my company? Why am I being asked to do this for my customer? And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly in some cases, why am I being asked to do this for myself? What's in it for me? And so if we can communicate thinking of those 3 audiences, I think that really helps win the hearts and minds of the team and get a better work product, even if that work product ends not how you thought it was going to end.
So again, you're listening to Crystal Collier. She is the head of strategy programs and insights with Electronic Arts. And, on Leadership View, Crystal, thank you. And if I just summarize quickly, walking the talk, taking risk. You talked a lot about communication, the listening, the sharing, the info, like the explanation of the whys that you provided there. I've always, my view of leadership too has been the way to achieve your own success is to be willing to help somebody else get it first. And we as leaders have that ability on a day in, day out basis. We have to find those ways creatively every single day to be consciously thinking about those and how we can impact it. I know on a quote, Barbara Cochran, which is well known, Shark Tank and other scenarios. But she had a quote saying that her best successes came upon the heels of failures. And I always think we as leaders learn from the failures. And I'm going to quickly ask you, Crystal, in your own perspective, if you think about those learnings, maybe failures we call them, what would come to mind? What would you want to communicate from your learnings?
Well, it's that back to the horse adage. When we fail or when we don't feel like we've presented our best self or done our best work, it's what we do next. And it's taking the time and energy to reflect on it and, to the extent possible, analyze and understand what went wrong and why it went wrong so we can really learn from it. So I think oftentimes we're in such a fast-paced world. Okay, that didn't work. I'm on to the next thing. Check the box, move on, move fast, be nimble, be agile, all those great things that we say. But if we don't take time to really look at our behavior and look at the behavior of our team and the outcomes and really self-reflect on that through journaling, through post-mortem or debrief or some sort of meeting with a team. And if you're lucky enough to have, and I hope everybody who's listening does have a mentor or someone they can rely on for different perspectives or to challenge them or support them, talking to that person about it, I think that really helps crystallize the learnings from things that have happened, because I think we can get sometimes stuck with our head in the sand and just, well, it didn't work, I'm moving on, and not spend the requisite time to learn from it and not do that same thing again.
Crystal, thank you for being candid and brave and willing to share that. Sometimes looking inward is it can feel a little uncomfortable or a little bit risky, but I think it's a very, very healthy thing that we have to do. I'm a firm believer that if you really want to learn or know about somebody, find out what books or what literature they're reading, what's inspiring them, or even for my own self, education and learning. There's so much that can be learned, I guess, again, in this industry. But for you specifically, Crystal, I'd love to. This tells me a little bit about you and your personality and your insights. Tell me about some books or whatever literature that has inspired you personally, influenced you, and why.
Well, I have a really big smile on my face, Chad, because you're talking to an English major here. So I hope you're ready for this answer. I love to read. I'm a big learner, big reader, have been my whole life. And um, I think that the way I spend my free time is largely around reading to learn more and using that for inspiration and education and just really pure entertainment. So I have to start with the English major in me and say Shakespeare and all the things that Shakespeare writes and the universality of the themes and the entertainment. And so I'm just going to put Mr. Shakespeare out there as my numero uno. And I can always go back to him for lessons, for entertainment, for morals, for fun, and for a little head scratching because it's not the easiest read.
Crystal,
I also
you're so much smarter than I. I never did good in the English major and always had a difficult time with Shakespeare.
well,
But I hear you, and I love that. But that's fantastic. Thank you.
that's kind of my my secret one that I'll share with everybody today. But like a lot of people, I like to read business books and I like to read behavioral type books and books that explain the science of why we do what we do. I love Malcolm Gladwell. I think many people are fond of him. I love Atal Gawande. I think, the lessons that he shares in his books, like Better, like Complications, the Checklist Manifesto, those are books about literally life-changing events. He's a surgeon. He is saving lives. And so while I can learn from those things, it also helps me realize that while what I do is really important, at the end of the day, I'm not up there in the curing cancer realm. So I can take a little bit of pressure off myself and off my team and off the way I think and just be inspired and learn from somebody at that level. One of the really great books I learned that impacted both the way I work and the way I think about designing programs that transform the customer experience was a book by Charles Duhigg, and it's called The Power of Habit. And this book talked about the science of habit and why we do what we do. And he taught me, something I'm sure I learned back in school, but just in a very approachable way, about a cue, a routine, and a reward, and how that cycle is really what matters in changing behavior. So, changing my own behavior, changing the way we train people, we communicate with people, changing our customer behavior. So, it just applies in so many different ways. And I'm really fond of that book. And I like to pass that out and have folks in my network be able to talk to me about that and use those terms. And it's a very inspirational book when you are seeking to change something, whether it's customer experience, your own behavior, maybe the way you parent, maybe the way you interact with your friends. It's a great book.
That's an excellent example, and I'll make sure I include that in our show notes. And I have not personally heard of that, but I'm going to definitely be looking at that one in regards to the design thinking. It's called The Power of Habit, and we'll make sure that we include the author and all of that in the show notes. But that's a fantastic example, and I appreciate it. So, Crystal, I just have a couple of more quick questions based on the time we have here. What this could be people or leadership currently in the CX industry, or maybe on the outside thinking of inward of joining in our side of the world with customer engagement and success and support outcome. What would you suggest to the listeners in the way of preparation or challenges or things that they should rightfully be considering and evaluating in if they're considering this industry or if they're in it, and just your advice for success, I guess, overall for this particular customer engagement industry?
Oh gosh, well, for me, there's nothing more important than the customer experience. And while all of my peers in the verticals across the organizations I work with have really important jobs, all of those things, whether it's product, sales, marketing, distribution, all of that boils down to how does your customer feel? What is your customer thinking? What is your customer doing in interacting with the company, whether it's through using a product or ordering a product or first hearing about a service that your company offers? So for me, it's really the be all and end all, because it's the whole umbrella, the sum of all the touch points that a person has with a brand. So thinking of it from that perspective, I get really jazzed. I also get really excited by thinking about the impact that you can have as a CX professional. The impact is huge. When I go into contact centers, I always get so excited with the buzz, with the energy, with the excitement of that frontline employee or a retail face-to-face employee interacting with customers and helping them and serving them. And so if you like change and you like dynamic environments, CX is a great place to be. If you like to see the fruits of your labor and see directly, even in a single interaction, because every interaction matters. So you can see at the end of talking to someone or chatting with someone or emailing with someone or tweeting a help, however you're interacting with them, you can see a difference every day. And that's super cool. And then I think finally, just looking at the world around us, the way that we're seeing things change and the digital age is upon us. And in that is the age of the customer. And so I just finished doing a study on voice, and voice is growing so fast. And so how do you grab on to new technologies and point them at ways to improve and even transform the customer experience? So those are some things that come to mind, Chad, when I think about why I would love people to join me in the mission to improve the way that we interact with our customers.
And you know me, I'm holding myself back, not going into some of those predictions and insights, but I know that's not the intent of today. But again, well said, Crystal. You just seem like a very well balanced, great person. I'm just so honored that you are part of our industry and you are part of representing the success that I think all of this has to offer. I'm going to leave it on this quick last question for us. And this can be any way you'd like to take it. It can be more from personal viewpoint, business viewpoint, however. But as far as from the main message from the audience in your session today, what is the main thing or one thing you want to leave or leave as a salient point to the audience to take away from your thought process and your session today?
Wow. Well, thank you for your kind words. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm honored. So one thing, wow, you're going to make it hard on me. I think it's really be curious. I think it's be curious, and in curiosity, you start to question why we do things. And when you question, then you listen to the answers you get, and then you think of new ideas. And then if you're perpetually curious, then you're never stopping. You're always growing, you're always developing, you're always pushing the proverbial envelope. And so I would ask my friends in CX or prospects to the CX industry, or just be curious.
I think there's a lot of heads nodding in agreement and in favor. And in fact, I'm writing that down. Be curious. I think that is a perfect message to conclude. Again, you've been listening to Krista Collier, the head of design and strategy or program and insights, I should say, at Electronic Arts. And, first of all of Customer Driven Podcast is everything about customer. It is from best practice sharing to insights to inspirational design leadership and messaging around our community. If you already haven't, I would encourage you to rate or subscribe. Visit our website, Execs in the Know. We are a very large customer executive community of brands like Crystal and many others that are sharing direct insights and perspectives around customer success and engagement. It's an amazing community. I'm very blessed to be part of it and associated with it. Get involved. At the end of the day, this industry is moving lightning fast. It's continuing to move lightning fast. I call it hashtag get involved. There are so many ways to participate with Crystal and many other leaders in our industry, sharing the insights and perspective. If Crystal has inspired you today and you'd like to get in touch with her, feel free to reach me, Chad at execsintheknow.com, and I'll do my best to try to help out on that. But on behalf of Execs in the Know and the podcast Customer Driven, this now will conclude our session. Crystal, you've been an amazing guest. Good luck with the continued pursuit of excellence you're having. And I just really want to say thank you again for your participation.
Thank you, Chad, and thanks for celebrating our industry and the females like me in it.
Awesome. Keep the charge. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to Customer Driven with Chad McDaniel. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. It really makes a difference in helping others find the podcast. For more information on our customer experience community, please visit execsintheknow.com.